We'll tell you a little bit more about some things that auditors know. And the first thing is, I hope most auditors know this. Peter Drucker, the management consulting guru, was the one who said this first. You can't manage something if you don't measure it. And this applies to every one of the management controls, including security, but also capacity planning and so on. Now, the measurement is meaningless. If I tell you that something is equal to 75, so what? You have to have a standard to compare it against. If you get a measurement and you don't have a standard to compare it against, it's meaningless. If I tell you the temperature outside is 85, and you don't know whether that's hot or cold or centigrade or Fahrenheit, it's sort of hard to put any meaning to it. So you need a standard to compare against. If I say the temperature outside is 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's the hottest it's ever been in September for 15 years, that might mean something different to you. But without the comparison to the standard, now the thing you compare it to could be what's happened in the past, or a regulation, or your own standard if your management decides what is acceptable. Talking more about what auditors know, auditing is defined as the evaluation of the adequacy of control. Not all auditors know this, but this is what they're supposed to be doing, looking at the controls that you have to say, are they adequate for whatever purpose? For computer security, for making sure that the financial statements are reasonably reliable, and so on. And then the next question, of course, is what is a control? The essence of control is comparison to a standard, as we said, with the temperature being 85 degrees. If you don't have your own standard, the auditors are likely to use their own checklists, and they may or may not be useful to you. If you don't have your own standards, some audit approaches, they're starting to say, what management controls do you have in place? We're not going to just use our checklist on what your security settings are. We're going to look at your policy and your baseline documents and your standards and your procedures and say, have you put formally in writing, have you documented the things that you need to be doing and how you do them to have good security or good financial integrity or good capacity planning or whatever? So auditors are starting to use a phrase, they say test of design. They say, have you designed the controls and documented them in writing? And one of the reasons for this is if your good technical staff is close to retiring and you're going to be bringing in new people, then you'd want some documentation of why things are set up the way they are right now. Now, a lot of data centers don't have baselines. They don't have documents saying how the options are supposed to be set. But the baselines, for example, if you say within our MVS Parm Labs, these are all the options that we have set here. This is why. This is our standard for the security options in the MVS baselines. You can use that as a standard, and you can almost force your auditors to use that as the standard to compare you against. Now, if you want a starting point, the U.S. government gives us several starting points. You may have heard of the STIGs, Security Technical Information Guideline. They're not laws, they're not regulations, they're guidelines, but it's a very useful starting point. We'll give you a link to pull these down. There's some other documents we'll point you to, but the STIGs for mainframe security in particular are extremely good starting points. Now, if you have your own standard, you can convince the auditors to use that instead of their own checklists. And the last comment we've got on what auditors know is preventive and detective controls, or preventive and corrective controls are better than detective ones. If you have some automated comparison to a standard, a control, that detects something happening beforehand and lets you prevent it, or actually does the prevention. If someone tries to break in over the internet to your mainframe computer and you've got something that recognizes it and prevents it, shuts something down or disables some connection, then that's a preventive control. It's before the event even happens, we stop it from happening. Corrective controls would actually do whatever adjustments are needed to to fix the problem. Detective controls are the ones where you get the report the day after. And if the guy's been into your financial systems and his check is already cleared, the detective ones controls may be a little bit too late. Oh yeah, someone took $10,000 out of accounts payable last night. Doesn't do you a lot of good if it's after the fact.